Okay, in this video I'm going to show you how to make a basic Minecraft house. But I want to make it detailed, I want to include lots of different gradients, I want to make it look good. For step 1 in Minecraft, it's going to be finding a good place to build your house. However, we're in a super flat world right now, which means we're going to have to make our own different area. But when you're in a real Minecraft world looking for a space, you're going to be looking around, traveling, looking for a mainly flat area to build on. You want it to be at least 25 by 25 so you have some space to actually build something substantial. Okay, we now have a nice large flat area that we can begin building up our little build that we're going to use on, if that made any sense. To start any good build, you need to pick out whatever your main block is going to be. And for us, we're going to be using granite. And then you're going to lay out the general shape you want your build to look like. What I mean by that is you're going to lay out the spaces on the bottom, and the height at which you are going to build it up to. The goal of this is just to help you visualize the general shape of your build so far so that you know what it's going to look like. And by building out these shapes, we can help visualize the space everything is going to take up and how it'll look before we actually do anything, so we're able to edit it. For this one, we even laid out the general roof shape and how it was going to be angled. Now, right now, we have a lot of big, flat walls. Well, they're not walls yet, but you can see where they would be. And that is not actually super great. You want everything to be fairly varied. To do that, what we're going to do is we're going to find little points, like right here. We could have a 5-block bit that would just jut out a little extra farther. That could be our doorway. They don't have to be crazy. They just have to break up the area of the build a little bit. And right here, we have another big, flat area. And we could do a similar one right there and there. And we could mirror a similar style of the roof on this tinier one to show that they're from the same building and keep the similar pattern. Now this breaks up your build a ton, but now what we want to do is fill in our big empty spaces. So we're just going to fill it in with one solid block, and that block is going to be granite. And I think we should do another time lapse for this. Okay, now we have an ugly diorite cube on top of our small grass patch. You gotta trust the process. It's gonna look better than this, I promise. For the next step, we're gonna add a roof because it's really ugly right now. And we're gonna use deep slate tiles because I think it really blends nicely with the granite, and it's just a good roof block in general. Looks like tiled roofs. So I'm just gonna quickly add this on. Okay. We now have a roof. It's looking fairly ugly, but there is a way we can help this. Right now, both the roof right there and the walls are on the same level. But if we use some walls in between, from afar, it'll help add a little bit of difference between the two and a little bit of height variation, which should be super helpful. Plus, we can detail this later when we texture everything. And we can do a similar thing with these down here to add some more similarity between all of them. Now, step 2 is to figure out our key points of interest. And by this, I mean doors, windows, stuff like that. So we need to make sure those make sense and we have those planned out before we do anything more. For instance, we know right here we're going to have a doorway. And it might help to actually make it 1 block taller. And then we can add our windows. For this type of building, I think it's usually smaller to go for the taller, shorter windows. The taller, shorter windows, yeah, rather than the wider, fatter. Wait, no. Taller, higher windows, wider, shorter windows. Yes. So right over here, we could plan out a couple of taller. So mine, if you're going to want to follow along, are going right here. Okay, now that we have some bottom layer windows, I'm going to quickly add a bunch of windows to this entire thing and just show you when it's done. We've got some windows right now, but it's a little hard to see them because there's granite. But if you want to follow along, we've got a window over here that goes up 7 blocks, I think. And then we've got 5-block tall windows over here and some 2-block tall windows up there, keeping 2 blocks in between. And then over here, I just did some quick 4x4 windows and then some doorways and entryways on top of our bridge. So this is our general shape. This is the outline we are going to follow when building the rest of this house. But first, it looks ugly right now, and so we want to detail it. Step one to detailing a build like this is to add some gradients or or texturing or shading, however you want to call it. So what we're going to do with that is we're going to highlight certain aspects, which is why I picked out all the doorways, windows, and pathways like that first, so that we can know the different aspects we want to highlight when we're shading, texturing, or using granites. For me, I think our granite is perfect for being the lightest color. That's going to be what we're going to use the most throughout the build. That's why I built everything out of it. And what I want to do is I want to either highlight areas of shadow, where I'm going to make things darker, or make it lighter. For this build, I think I'm just going to focus on making it darker. So what we're going to need is some blocks that'll shade this and blend it into a darker. If you are struggling with a way to figure out a gradient, I recommend using Qblocks. I think it's an awesome website that'll help you figure out your gradients and is excellent. So we're going to start at granite and move into cobbled deep slate. Now we need to pick out the blocks in between that will make it blend nicely. So here is our gradient. We use the cobbled deep slate, and then we can move into the regular deep slate. Now the regular deep slate is interesting because it is rotational. So different sides will have different darkness values. So this one right here is the lightest side, while this side over here is darker and matches more closely with this. And then they're going to fade into tuff, then some dripstone, and then into some granite. So to start off our texturing, an easy way to go about this is to look for the bottom corners and just put your darkest blocks there, because these are going to be the areas that are most weathered down and exposed to the elements, these corner bits. So right here, we could also put the darker blocks, and then what we can do is move off of that in some random fashion up into your lighter blocks. So I've just done a quick little example here of what you can do with the darker areas fading into your lighter areas, making it stand out more. Now, this is a fairly long gradient. I wouldn't just do it like this all around. I would actually keep it fairly shorter and maybe not even use your darkest blocks sometimes. Like for this one, you could just start with this and then move straight into your tuff and then dripstone. It doesn't have to be going up half your build long. It can just be fairly short. And you don't even need to use the darkest block at the bottom always. Like you can have tuff right here, and for instance, I might even just put some dripstone here. I could say this is just a fairly upkept area, and so it's not going to be as dirty. You also don't always need to blend everything perfectly. I could have dripstone next to this, and it would look fine. Your main goal is to make it look nice from afar. And then you'll use details to make it look better up close. But since we're just focusing on getting our shading done right now, we're just going to focus from afar. Another thing you might want to shade is your windows. So underneath your windows, you're going to have darker areas because it'll have things above them shading down. So we can use this over here as an example. You can use, for instance, tuff moving into our dripstone, which are some of our lighter dark colors, like middling colors that we can use that'll still shade it darker but aren't going to be this extreme. And you don't even need to do all of them. For instance, this one could just start at dripstone, and this one could have nothing. So I'm going to quickly lay out the general texturing that I'm going to use for all of this, and then bring you guys back in. We have our texturing and shadows all set up. Now you'll notice there is a lot of flat, straight granite right now, and it is looking ugly. So there's one thing we can do to fix that, and that is adding more blocks that look a similar shade to granite. So we're using brick and some polished granite to mix in with the granite, because these will all blend together nicely and keep it fairly the same shade. If you place them down, they look very similar, except for the brick. But we need a sort of standout block because all of it looks granite right now, and so we're going to use the brick because it's sort of the same color but adds a little bit more red into the build, which will stand out. What you can do is have a very random wall where you just place things in randomly, or you can put it into patches where you'll have little groupings of the same type of block where you're trying to make more sense. I personally think this is a lot nicer than this, especially when done on a larger scale, because you can highlight certain aspects. For instance, we can make all the brick patterns look like this sort of zigzag line and make them all wavy. Or we could just go back to how it was and just have them in the random patches. Either one looks good and works fine, and I'll probably use both. But both of them are significantly more appealing than just random. This is all just opinion-based. And everything in building is opinion-based on what people think looks better. So feel free to do whatever you want. Nothing is set in stone. In fact, all the building rules I just showed you, it's important that you know to break them sometimes because they don't always apply. Ignore everything I just said and apply this building rule directly to our build in the form of just random patches of brick in certain places. We've now got our little patches in, and you can see that I didn't actually do too many. Most of it is still straight granite, and that's because that is fine. From far away, it still looks fairly good, and all of the brick and polished granite just blends into one, so it's not actually necessary to spam a bunch around, because from afar away you won't even notice it. This is just to help up close, to add some variation into what you're looking at, so it doesn't all look the same. And you'll even, whoa, lag, and you'll even notice that some of the walls are changed out for brick walls instead of granite walls, and I've textured this side as well. Next step is the roof. We could detail the roof. The roof might need some detailing. The rest of the thing is looking super nice and really textured and standing out, but the roof needs some attention. For a roof, I am simply just going to go with random texture because, well, you could do it this way where it's all different shading. I want to show that it can work, that both work, like they both look good. So I'm just going to do this one in random texture. So right here, these are the blocks we're going to be using in our roof. They're all just variations of deep slate, and I think that'll work perfect for our roof. You can see we've done the texturing on the roof, and it's all nice and random. And I think it looks fine. From afar, it makes the roof have slightly more interesting aspects to it, but your main focus is still definitely on the actual build. The next step for us to do is going to be to add detail. Now this can mean anything. There are lots of different ways for people to detail, and they don't all have to be the same. However, I find it's usually easier to just follow a pattern when detailing to keep it consistent and, more importantly, easier. Because building is a long process, and it's sometimes nice just to make parts of it speed up. So when detailing, there's 3 main tricks I use. Or maybe there's more. I don't know. Number 1 is to add detail around your windows and points of interest like doors. Now what I mean by this is you can smooth them out, add more details to certain aspects of it, so it doesn't all look the same. And another one is the actual window portion of your builds. Now, a builder trick, I guess you could call it, is to use black concrete behind your windows. So 1, it doesn't let you see the walls behind it, and 2, it doesn't mean you have to build the interior. I mean, who wants to build an interior? Let's be honest. No one really wants to build an interior. It's the least favorite part of building. Only weirdos build interiors. Now, it doesn't actually have to just be black concrete. There are other options you can put behind it. For instance, if you want it to be more lit up and less stark of a contrast against the granite, another easy way to do it is to find some honey or ochre frog lights and put them behind the build, because they will just add a nice yellowish tint that'll make it look like there is just a lit up window behind whatever you're staring. I personally think the ochre frog lights are nice, but I know some people who do actually like the honey. And I think both work. If you are going to do honey though, it may actually help you to put something behind them like the frog lights, so you'll end up doing them anyways. but it'll give it a nice yellowish tint and it won't look as extreme as this. But both are options. I am going to use the honey for this one because I'd like to get better at that aspect of it. I usually just use this. But you can use whatever you want. When you are doing the honey, I forgot to mention, it's very important that you cover up all sides of the honey. You don't want to leave bits flowing out, because otherwise when you look at it from this angle, which everyone is going to be looking at your windows through this angle, it's the most important angle to focus on, you don't want them to see like different aspects of your build. So if you do cover everything, it does actually, like if you cover all the sides, it does make it a difference, and a slight one, but it will make it look better. But yeah, now we got our yellowish tinted windows, and we could do a similar thing where we put the black behind it, and it'll make it look like an unlit window. Here's your window with the lights on, here's your window without the lights on. Another thing you might have noticed me do is use scaffolding for the window, and that's because it'll highlight the different sort of panes in each of the window more than just regular glass. However, regular glass does work perfectly fine. In fact, to prove it, I'm going to make these windows right here regular glass and show off a different trick. So here is the trick right here. You can get this sort of window pane thing where you get the little X or cross or T or whatever you want to call it. You can get that little thing in your window pane by doing this trick on a much smaller scale. So this is just 2 blocks. The way you do that is you have okay, hold on, we'll go over here to the explaining area. You put 2 panes, one of them being a colored pane and one of them just being a regular pane, and from afar it gives that look. Now it's important that one of them is a glass pane, because this corner, this side thing, is much less extreme than this one, and that's what gives you that middle bit that you look at, is the regular glass panes, this thing. Now, I don't know why the see-through one has the most extreme color, but it just does. Now, you can swap them out either way. You can have the color one in the back and the white one in the front, depending on how you want things to look. Though I will recommend doing it the other way around, because as I said, these are the most extreme, and so your yellow one won't show as well. So if you do it like this, you can see you still get all the corners, and then this one shows up, and it comes out slightly yellow tinted because of the glass. So that's an option. So let me just quickly add in the rest of these windows. Whoa-oh, I want some more. Whoa-oh, what are you waiting for? So I've done the rest of the windows, and you can see some of them have the lights off, and some of them have lights on to add a bit of variation and to make it actually look, get out of the way, explainer wall, and to make it actually look like a real building, where you don't have every single light turned on. For the last little step with the windows, we need to actually add like the little overhang and sticky outy bits. What I mean by this is you could put out your campfire, mix it with some spruce fence gates, and you got yourself a little overhang. Another thing you can do is add oak trapdoors to your build, because these are the things that look most like a sort of window shutter to your build, as a way to just off to the side, or you can also use it like half turned in right next to the actual window part. And you can also have it so your window is closed. Like that. These are all different options of what you can do. So there we go. We've finished off our windows. And now it's time to add some different details into the mix. Because your build is not just windows. It has other things, like archways or doors, and we're going to tackle those right now. These are going to be a little bit easier than windows. When building a doorway, there is not actually much you can do in terms of detailing. You have very limited blocks that the player can walk through. In fact, it's just one. Well, there's 2 actually. Doors and trapdoor. We're just going to be using doors. So what you can surround your door in is what changes when you build different doorways. So in this one, we can surround it with all spruce trapdoors, so it looks like everything blends in with the doorway. You can also switch it out so your doors are on the side and not the center, if you prefer. Both of these look fine. You can also use like a stripped version of the doors wood, or just the plank in general. These are also options. For the doorway, you can actually add different details. I personally think adding some signs to your doorway is a great way to add some details, like saying what each area is, like main house or tower thing. They just add some detail and tell you what each space is. For instance, this is a tower thing. Now, if you have any archways in your build, I'd recommend smoothing out the sides. But then for this interior here, you could actually do something really unique with the space. For example, I'm going to make this one be an area that is made out of stone. Different, like, stone colors, not a sign. Different stone colors using andesite and stone bricks. And then you could do even little weirder things, like right here is a perfect spot to put a shrine, and we could make like a weird shrine by just using like some glazed terracotta candles around the area. Then we could just have this be a shrine to a flower pot. But now you have a little point of interest in your build, and it'll just add something different in. You could also have done an armor stand and just put some things on the armor to make it stand out as well. And you could do a different one on both sides if you wanted. And now this brings us to the final little detail you can add, and that is random clutter. By that, I mean just a bunch of decorated pots, barrels, chests, or even like hay bales. Those are pretty good ones that you can add around your build that'll just make it fit in with the area more nicely and not just seem like it was randomly placed there. Like, for instance, right now, you have a bunch of grass with random junk around it, but your house is sort of just placed there and it doesn't really blend in with the area. So adding some random clutter, like those pots and candles that we did right there, can be a great way of doing that. Personally, to me, I feel like these 5 blocks are the perfect random clutter blocks that you can use just spammed around the build. Like, you could just have a ton of barrels placed in this corner, for example, and that'll just add to it and make it not such a straight line. And then over here, we could do a couple more barrels. So now we have clutter around the area, and the only thing really left to do to finish up this build is to add little walkway, like little actual railings to the walkway, and a roof to this. But as for the rest of it, those are just like specific things to this build. The rest of this now fits a lot better into your landscape, and what you need to do from now is actually add some details to the landscape, like some paths and some trees. So I'll give you an example of what those look like in a second after I finish off these. But I think the best way just to show you the final little bits of everything is a time lapse. Let's kick it. That sounds weird. That sounds stupid. And here is our finished build. We added a little sign up there and a bunch of trees surrounding the entire area, as well as some terraforming and paths. I didn't want to cover this because this isn't really part of the actual building, except for maybe the sign over there, but it's like 5 blocks. If you want the trees, most of the trees are just a schematic, literally, of the tree I used in a previous video. I'll put it on the screen right now so that you can see it. All the schematics in there are free, and I will be posting a schematic of this build as well for those who want it. It will be free as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe. Thank you guys for so much of the ongoing support. I've really enjoyed making videos, and if we could get to all the way to 1,000 subscribers, that would be awesome. I enjoyed building this type of thing a lot, and if you guys really enjoyed it, 100 likes and I'll do something like this again. Whatever the top comment is, it can be a terraforming thing, it could be a similar building, it could be whatever style of building you want. Like, I could do a sci-fi version of this and show you some tips and tricks for how to do that. But yeah, 100 likes and I will do it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye!